Welcome back, insiders. So if you are long or short, which seems to be a lot of people right now, FSR stock, which is Fisker Inc., an EV automotive, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to what's going on in this company and what's going to happen this week. So in this video, we're going to be discussing what's happening online with Fisker and how I actually ended up finding this company. We're also going to compare it to GME, and I'm going to explain the short float, interest, and ratio that's happening with Fisker, which is really important. And then I actually want to explain why why Fisker probably won't do a GME like move, although it could happen. And then we're going to look at the chart, and I'm going to finally wrap up with telling you guys what I'm going to do with a FSR trade. I found this ticker kind of an interesting way. I always check short interest stocks. So this is highshortinterest.com, and it's a really simple website, but here you'll see that FSR has a short interest at a 47.28%, and I was like, ooh, that's pretty high. Now, if you don't know what short interest is, don't worry, I'm going to fully explain it in a second here, but first I want to show you guys a video I saw which came like right after I noticed FSR, which got me even more curious about this ticker. So there's some big YouTubers making videos about FSR, and specifically on the automotive review side of things. So not so much the stock side. And this is, look at this. This is the worst car I've ever reviewed. That's pretty crazy. And he does not hesitate.
I think it's just the worst car I've ever tested.
To let people know right away. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I wanted to dive a little bit more into the analytics behind this company. So coming over to FinViz, which is another analytics site that I like to check out, because I don't like to take this short interest at face value. It makes me a little bit nervous because it is a delayed indicator, and they usually come from the stock exchanges. So in this case with FSR, it's listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So every 2 to 4 weeks, you get this updated short interest. So it's not going to be that new. So I like to check at least a few other websites to see what they have. And yeah, here's New York Stock Exchange, and FSR here has a short float of 26%. So what is this short float and why does it matter? So here is the shares float, and this is basically how many shares are available to trade, right? So you have shares outstanding, which is the total outstanding shares, and then you have the float, which is basically the amount of shares that are actually being traded on the market. What does that mean? Well, sometimes shares are being locked up by institutions, by insiders, and so on and so forth, and they might not be able to sell those shares for whatever lockup period or whatever deal they have going on. So those are basically removed from the shares outstanding. So there's only these amount of shares that you can buy and sell at any given time if people are looking to sell them. So the float, the shares float, is the amount of these shares that are available to sell. And if we look down here at the short interest, 26% of roughly 400,000 gives us 102 million short interest. So that's how many shares are being shorted right now. Now, if we go down a little bit further, you'll see the average volume here at 36.84 million. So that's always the average volume the last 30 days. So that's roughly somewhere in this area, you're going to see that 36.84 million. You can see here's 50, 100, 150 million. And so 36 will probably be like somewhere here, which makes about sense because that's the average of the last 30 days. So if that's the amount of volume that's being shorted or that's being traded per day, you'll see the short ratio here is 2.8. And that's basically how many times does this average volume need to fill the short interest. So it would take 2.8 average trading days for all shorts to cover. Now that's not too crazy. I've seen this number a bit higher, like, even in the 5s and north of 5, but this is pretty important to notice. I mean, volume is increasing, and in these big trading days, people can cover their shorts much quicker, but these are the kind of situations where you might expect a short squeeze to happen because there are so many people short this ticker. And if it's 47%, this would be much more drastic, especially right here. So FSR, short interest, 47%. So we don't really know this number, but let's say it is 47%, then this short ratio is probably like in the 5s, maybe even in the 6 or 7 zone. So that's when things can get really, really hairy. Now, like I said, I do want to compare this to GME really quickly, which You guys remember the GME saga. It was absolutely crazy. So this ticker went from a sub dollar and ran all the way to $1.20, and that was absurd. Now I wanted to see, and look, the short float on this ticker is still at 22.6% with a short ratio at 10. That's pretty insane. So there's still a lot of people shorting this one and reshorting it, but at the high, this was really crazy. So, and here, I actually learned something here as well. Approximately 140% of GameStop's public float had been sold short. So I was like, what? It can be over 100%? And here it goes. Some shorted shares had been relent and shorted again. How crazy is that? An analyst at Goldman Sachs later noted that short interest exceeding 100% of a company's public float had only occurred 15 times in the prior 10 years. So this is a pretty rare event, is what they're trying to say. And what I'm thinking is, okay, well, that's a lot of people shorting this ticker, GameStop, but even FSR has a lot of short interest. Now, I was kind of thinking to myself, 26% isn't that much. And when I looked at the ticker initially a couple of weeks ago, I noticed it was at like roughly 41% on FinViz, and now it's actually going down, which means people are covering already. And this is why I think we might not see a big GME-like move with GameStop, because people are already covering. So the short float is already going down. And I noticed that somewhere in this area. I'll show you guys on the chart. I took a note of it on the TD Ameritrade chart in a second. And the second reason I think we might not see a GME kind of move is because if we come to, here it is, dilution tracker, which has some more information about this ticker, you'll see that the amount of shares that are available, so basically the float, or in this case, the amount of shares outstanding, but oftentimes that equals the float to some degree, is increasing. So there's more and more shares entering the market, which means there's dilution, usually through things like secondary offerings or warrants. And if you scroll here, there are warrants available, which is 20 million shares. Basically, it gives somebody the rights to sell shares onto the market at a predetermined price, that exercise price right here. What I would be expecting is if there was a rally in the price of FSR, these shares would be dumped into the market. They don't want to sell as the price goes down. They want to sell on any sort of spikes to the upside. So even though shorts might get squeezed, I think there's a lot of things still going against this company. So let's go ahead and look at the stock price on FSR. This is a daily, so it's down from its highs of 31.96% all the way down to that perfect low of 52 cents. That's about a 98% pullback that I measured earlier, and that's pretty crazy. Now, I did notice FSR almost 2 months ago on high short interest. That website I showed you guys earlier had a 45% short interest right in this area, and it's still selling off, and the shorts have been covering. So this number has been getting lower unless the other website is true, which is at 47%. So there is a covering going on here, but it still could potentially have a huge move into, let's say, 115, or even where this former high is at 17, or this big resistance zone roughly around 2. Now, we've already had a move off the FSR lows at 52, and we're actually crawling up quite a lot, like 50%. And here's what I was thinking about doing. I was thinking, well, since earnings is coming up, there's a lot of people that are watching this ticker. A lot of YouTubers are covering this ticker in terms of car reviews, not so much actually the stock price. But this ticker is getting a lot of publicity right now, or this company, I should say. And we have the big news coming out on, let's say, the 29th. So tomorrow, extended hours. I was thinking a little bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news. I wanted to get in on this little front side. I had alert here and actually got met, but I did not enter this trade. So I shoulda, coulda, woulda, probably put a limit order in here. It would have been up 15%. I don't think I'm actually going to touch FSR. It's not really my strategy, so I'm going to leave it alone, but I'm definitely going to be watching it because it's quite interesting. If I could have got a low risk entry just because there was big support here, I probably would have gone for it. But if I was a little bit more aggressive, I would have already put a limit order in there. So coulda, shoulda, woulda to that. Anyway, I don't want to predict what's going to happen with the earnings on Friday because I just feel like that's a total guessing game, and I'm not really interested in that. My main strategy is about trading momentum after it happens. But if I see FSR exploding after earnings, especially if earnings are good and it beats estimates, then there might be that short squeeze potential, and then I actually might jump on it for some day trading. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments below what you're doing on FSR. Are you long, are you short, or are you just holding for the ride after the open? Do you think there's going to be a short squeeze or not? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Thanks for tuning in and dropping that like. I'll see you next time.